Hey, I'm Brad Taylor, and you're watching the Crew Reviews.
Well, we welcome back to the Crew Reviews. Our friend Brad Taylor is upcoming Into the Gray Zone. Brad, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me again. It's good to see you guys.
Welcome,
Always good to
sir.
have you on.
Cheers. Drink.
Well,
What are you
yeah,
drinking, Sean?
cheers. I'm actually drinking Bardstown collab with Silver
Good
Oak.
bourbon.
It's very good bourbon. So,
Sean's like
Brad,
the only one drinking.
why don't you give our audience just a quick thumbnail sketch of what they can expect in Into the Gray Zone?
Yeah, it's the gray zones is a kind of a term we use for hybrid warfare, and it's basically what geopolitics does when they don't want to go into nuclear war. They do everything from insurgency up to outright assassinations, things like that. And then the gray zones about the machinations between the United States and India and China, all fighting together to try to get something done inside India.
That's concise and perfect. Uh, Into the Gray Zone explores the concept of warfare, as you said, within the ambiguous space between peace and war. Um, how have you seen this concept evolve during your military career versus how it's playing out in today's geopolitical landscape, particularly in regions like India?
It's kind of waxed and waned with in the old days in the Cold War, it played out quite a bit. There was a lot because we were fighting its USSR, and so nobody wanted to go to nuclear war. After the Soviet Union fell, then we had a little more hot wars, Afghanistan, Iraq, and that kind of thing. And everybody saw us as the 800-pound gorilla, which is true, especially after Desert Storm. Nobody was going to go toe to toe with us. There's one thing every nation learned after Desert Storm was you're not going to fight tank on tank with the United States. And so it started growing again. So they were doing this hybrid warfare where they can kind of sit there and say, that wasn't me. I didn't do that to try to get their national goals done. And, Iran's probably the best example of it. They're perfect example of it with Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, all these guys we're hearing about now. They're executing Iranian policy, but Iran has the ability to sit there and go, that wasn't me. I didn't do that.
What scares you more? The or not scares you, but like what gives you more pause? The conventional stuff or tank on tank, or maybe limited nuclear stuff or the, you know, more
I guess that you'd have to frame that question as to whether what is more likely to occur would be the hybrid warfare,
Mhm.
which is going to cause death and destruction. I mean, obviously, 9/11. But what is the most catastrophic would be nuclear war.
Yeah.
And so you look at those two, uh, poles there, and then, there's this is the most likely to happen, but the least likely to cause a lot of damage. This is the least likely to happen, but this is the most likely to cause a ton of damage.
All around bad. So into the gray zone, you delve into the complex religious dynamics between Sikhs and Muslims in
Yeah.
India. And there's one thing I always learn. I always learn something. There's one thing I always learn. I'm always entertained. Two things. I'm always entertained when I read a Brad Taylor story, but I always learn something. But what surprised you most during your research about these historical tensions, and how did you approach writing about such sensitive cultural and religious relationships while remaining respectful to all perspectives?
Yeah, well, honestly, that's where the idea came from. I mean, usually there's some story that comes out that I see that and I go, what the hell? That's the story there. And in this case, actually about a year ago, April 2024, uh, Canada, there was a Sikh separatist, a Sikh Canadian citizen who was a Sikh separatist in Canada, was killed in a drive-by shooting. It was just a mugging, no big deal. And then a month later, Canada came out and said, "Hey, the Research and Analysis Wing, which is their version of the CIA, hey, they assassinated this guy." And I was like, "What? What do you mean, India? I mean, that's something that Russia does. That's plutonium underwear stuff from Putin. Why would they go into Canada and assassinate some guy who's a Canadian citizen, even if he is sitting there saying Sikhs for Sikhs?" And then 2 months later, we arrested a guy in the United States who was trying to assassinate a Sikh separatist in the United States. And in this case, as always seems to happen, I don't know why criminals are like this. They tried to bribe a undercover FBI agent to go kill this guy, and they arrested him. And it turned out they started uncovering that, pulling the thread, and the Raw was implicated in that. And with the second one happening, I said to myself, okay, there's some kind of story here because we're ostensibly we're allies. So is Canada. I mean, the biggest diaspora for India is in Canada. And I was like, well, there's something going on here. So that's where the research started. I didn't know anything about Sikh separatism or anything like that. I was like, I want to figure out what's going on here. And that's what led into writing about India.
Do you ever like when kind of building on what Chris was saying, do you ever sort of is there anything that gives you pause when you're writing it, like as far as sensitivity issues? I mean,
Yeah.
how
Yeah,
do
I mean I don't go out of my way. It's not a sensitivity issue in the politically correct way.
you,
It's more of a sensitivity issue of would I be embarrassed if somebody from India read this book? That's I don't want to insult anybody. I don't want anybody to read one of my books and say, he dumped all over us. That's not what it's like. And so I do spend a lot of time trying to develop the characters, in this case, the Sikh separatists, as full-blooded human being types of how did they get to where they are. They're not Dr. Evil. And the same side with the Raw and things like that. So I do take a lot of I want to get the culture and the sensitivities correct, even if it may poke somebody in the eye. There will be somebody else who does read it and say, no, no, he's got that right.
Yeah,
yeah,
you do go you sorry, Sean.
no, go ahead.
You do go into the background of the protagonist. I mean the
Yeah,
antagonist. And you talk about like jail time and whatnot. So it as I was reading it and being a writer, I'm just like, I wonder how much research he did and how little actually got put in. It seemed like a lot, but how little
yeah,
it actually got
a
put in.
lot.
And I was wondering there was a
Well,
lot of stuff you wanted to get in there.
I mean, yeah, there's a ton of. I've got like 18 books here on all of that stuff, and it originally started out with the Sikh separatist thing kind of attracted me, so I started writing about it. But it was going to be all well. First, it was going to be Kashmir and Pakistan and the Muslim thing there, and that was going to be it. And I was like, everybody's written about that. I'm sick of those guys. And so then I started looking at China, started reading about their geopolitics, and that's where I started. It was just a ton of research on, okay, where are these guys located in India? How has this gone politically through history? And it does have a pretty big history. The Khalistan Commando Force was a big thing. That was their Al Qaeda. They were going nuts over it in the 80s.
Yeah.
And to the point, it's a historical fact. Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her own bodyguards who were Sikh, and they went nuts and killed a bunch of Sikhs. And they had the Golden Dome attack. All that's real history.
Yeah, which you
Uh,
throw into the story, which I really appreciate because it's, I thought I knew some stuff, but I actually really know nothing. And so reading that, I was like, dude, that's awesome. Awesome in the sense that I'm learning something.
Well, and Kamel or how is that Kamel? Is that how it's pronounced? The name of
yeah,
it?
well, my the audio people always ask me how to pronounce these names. I'm like, look, I know how to spell it. You got to figure out how to
Well,
pronounce it.
well,
Especially like when I was writing about the Chinese names, like, how do you spell this? I was like, I don't know. There's 4 consonants in a row. You figure it out.
well, his backstory, going to what you were saying about making them human, I actually set the book aside for a second and thought about what it would take to radicalize me, in a situation
Yeah.
like that. And it was, I thought that was really effective because it got my mind kind of spinning on, you obviously want the antagonist to be the antagonist, but it's also helpful when you can see how they got to where they are because then it's not a caricature and it makes the stakes mean all that much more, I think. So well done, I guess is
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
appreciate that.
one of the elements of Into the Gray Zone and really many of the Pike Logan novels is the confluence of intelligence agencies, criminal enterprises, rebel resistance organizations, and even random lone wolf operators or individuals kind of coming together. Are these instances of all the divergent interested parties running into each other on constantly the norm in that world, or is it more kind of amped up for popular fiction?
I don't, I think what's amped up is the compression of it happening over and over again. For instance, in my own books, people say they're realistic. Yeah, in the instance that Pike's in a gunfight, that seems realistic. Would Pike get in 18 gunfights in the span of 2 weeks? No, that's not going to happen. But in this case, I mean, just as an example of the story that got me involved in this, the people they hired to kill the people in Canada and the United States were Indian drug runners. The Raw got a bunch of criminals and put them over the United States and said, "We'll pay you a bunch of money. Go ahead and kill these guys." Well, the book I'm writing right now, not to jump ahead, but another story that piqued my interest was Iran's killing people all over the world, and they hired the Hell's Angels to do it
Really?
because they could get into the countries in Europe. Nobody's going to look at it Hell's Angel. So you've got this threat vector of Iran's going to have these guys assassinated. You're looking for Iranians. You're not looking for Hell's Angels. And they're through their drug
Americans?
networks, they paid the Hell's Angels to commit murder.
Are they Americans? Like American holding
So in this
passports?
case, they were German, but they did pay some Americans to do the same thing in America. They just didn't.
We got a
And once again,
problem.
America foiled the plot. In Germany, they actually whacked the guy.
Oh, so
Jeez. That's one I didn't see coming.
so
I didn't either. That started a new book.
how does your experience working with American intelligence agencies inform your portrayal of foreign intelligence services like India's RAW?
Yeah,
and what,
that.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, what unique challenges did you discover about, how they approach operations compared to like how we approach operations?
Yeah, the hardest thing is because I know how we do it, but I've seen like I've worked with Israel and I've worked with selected other ones, but not really in depth. They
Mm.
they never show you the. So when you work with another intelligence agency, they always act like they're not going to show you their dirty laundry. Neither do we. So when they come over and see us, we're like, everything we do is perfect. Look at this perfect stuff we do. And then when they leave the room, we yell at each other because you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right. Well, so I don't really know exactly how they work, and I did read. I mean, I've got three autobiographies right here from Raw chiefs, and I've got two histories of the Raw, and I just read through that, and they'll once they're done and they write a biography, they'll discuss some of the problems they had, or here's what this worked, here what that worked, and some of the mechanics I can extrapolate just based on how they run. For instance, the Raw, the research and analysis wing. Now we have the CIA, which falls under Congress, and you have Title 50 on the U.S. code they've got to follow.
Yeah.
MI5, MI6 has the same thing in their parliamentary system. The Raw doesn't. It works for the prime minister, and it's just a law unto itself. And so they've had a lot of successes with that, and they've also had some really boobish, huge failures because they didn't have any checks and balances, and they just went running amok. And so I started just kind of extrapolating on that. But that's. I'm sure, somebody from the Raw may read my book and go, he don't know what the hell he's talking about. So anytime I hit something like that, where it has to be super granular detail of how this works, I'll find a way to hand wave that over. Okay. We're not,
What about the like the black cats? Did you ever have experience with them?
I have not personally, but I know people who have.
Okay.
And their big thing was the Mumbai attack that happened in
Yeah.
2008. They came out and they formed up, and they were kind of like us. They had this one unit ready to go in this whole country. And then when it came time ready to go, they weren't where they needed to be. And so a lot of death and destruction happened. The Black Cats are the ones that ended up solving that problem. They wouldn't run around killing a whole bunch of people. In fact, they have a bunch of movies you can watch, Indian Bollywood movies that are pretty good, that they're tributes to these guys. But since then, they set up all these separate headquarters all over the country so they could react. And they've got kill houses and all this cool stuff. So I personally haven't, but I talked to some guys who had. And they're pretty switched on dudes.
Okay.
Following the thread we were just talking about regarding, and this goes beyond, I'm going to go beyond Raw with this question. It's kind of philosophical, I suppose. In a larger sense, how do you think the cultural norms or inherent traits of various countries impact the way they collect intelligence and execute operations? Like, is the level of restraint or the lines that some will cross but not others, is that inherent in the culture of that company, or do you think everybody's kind of operating in the same gray zone?
No, I think it is definitely. There's definitely a moral aspect, whether it's even, if it's inculcated in U.S. code there's certain things we cannot do. I mean, we had Leahy Amendment, things like that. We can, if that guy is a known criminal, deadly murder guy, we're not allowed to operate with him. Other people freely, that's who they get attracted to. And I'm going to use that because that's how I can leverage what I want to get done and I can stay free from it. Now, eventually there's going to be some kind of confluence where we're all kind of in the mud together.
Mhm.
But definitely countries, I mean, like Russia, that has no compunction about doing anything. The only thing that's stopping Russia is, will I get caught? Other than that, they're going to do it. Now, there'll be things that'll stop us. We'll say, well, that's kind of morally, we're not going to do that.
Well, do you think that puts us at a disadvantage?
I think yes and no. I think it puts us definitely disadvantage just in the fact that they'll do whatever they want to, but it also means that nobody trusts a Russian. I mean, you're not going to trust anything Russia does. And our ability to gain loyalty is based on our moral framework. People are more willing to work with us precisely because we're not a bunch of amoral killers. I mean,
The
when somebody wants to do something, you go into a country and we want to do buy with through in a foreign country, we've got to work with their intelligence agency and say, here's what we want to do. If they think that we're just like Russians, they're just like, well, they're just using me. They're going to kill everybody, and it's going to be mud on my face, and I'm not going to do anything with these guys because they're a bunch of cowboys who don't care where the bodies pile up. On the other hand, if they think that okay, this guy's here for the right reasons, going to do the right thing, he's not going to run roughshod over me, and just to get what he wants, then they'll cooperate with you.
Okay, I think from the cheap seats, the only part of that what you were saying, I think it was the Leahy Act that prevented us from dealing
Yeah,
with. Okay, Uh, I always felt that was kind of a put us at a little bit of a disadvantage because
it did.
you can't go fight a drug war if you're not dealing with drug dealers. You know what I mean? For instance, on a small scale.
Yeah, they and it when it first happened, they had it for good reasons. It was the Iran Contra thing and all that. Dude, we're giving money to guys who are basically death squads. It's like, okay, these guys doing human rights violations. We shouldn't be doing it. And it's not actually. I'd have to go reread the amendment. I don't think it's lawbreakers. It's human rights violations. You're not
Oh,
allowed to deal with a guy who's lopped somebody's head off
okay.
and plans on lopping somebody else's head off.
Okay.
But after 9/11, that did bring a problem because you got terrorists who were lopping heads off, and he knows where the other guy is, and if he's willing to talk, let's go.
Squeeze them a little bit. Hmm. So Pike Logan series now reached, is it 19 books, right?
Yeah, this is 19.
So Into the Gray Zone is number 19. I kind of know how you're going to answer this question, but how has your approach to writing these thrillers evolved since your first book? And what aspect of Pike's character development in this latest installment surprised even you as the author? It's pretty evident to me as a reader, like what's happening to him.
Yeah, so this one I kind of explored a little bit. I mean, he's been running and gunning for a long time, and that's going to take a toll. Sooner or later, that's going to take a toll. I've kind of hinted at it in past books, and I decided to bring it out in this one just to kind of touch on it, not to make it, some kind of weep story or anything like that. Um, but that, like we've talked about before, you're going to evolve as a human, and so is he. He's seen a lot in his life. He's done a lot in his life. And so some of the things that happens to him in this book kind of surprises him. He's like, what happened with me right there? I shouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that in the past. Something's going on right now.
You pull a lot of that from personal experience and guys that you worked with.
Yeah.
The knowing when to step back, step away, right? Like put in your papers, like you think you're going to cross over that line.
Well, I wouldn't say it's knowing when to step back and step away. I'd say it's knowing when to seek help. You never have to step away. It's just there's not a bucket that fills up, and when it starts overflowing, you're done. Next in,
Yeah.
you just got to figure out a way to drain the bucket while you're still there, so it doesn't overflow.
Do you think our military and our intelligence, they keep an eye out for that for our operators?
They do now. They used to not. Nobody did because we weren't in constant war, so it wasn't kind of a thing.
When did
But
that
they certainly do now.
when did that start picking up?
I would say, at least for us, it happened after Mogadishu.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, let's face it, from Mogadishu to 9/11, there wasn't a whole lot of fighting going on. Mogadishu was the biggest battle we'd seen, and it was a pretty fierce fight.
Right.
Kind of drilling down into Chris's question to a specific thing. Throughout your Pike Logan series, you've created this complex dynamic between Pike and Jennifer. How do you balance maintaining the core of those characters, who they are, while allowing them to evolve in meaningful ways over a long running series?
That's probably one of the toughest things, is trying to get a new reader to understand what the dynamic is between the two without either boring an old reader or doing something that the old reader would say, that is not what these two would do. And there has been, in fact, when I was writing this book, there was a couple of scenes where, Elaine, my wife's the first reader, and she read a paragraph and said, "You've said this to death. Cut it." And I go back and say, you've said it to death because you've read all the books, but the other people have not read the books. And so we have a debate on how much should I leave in here, slim it down, just leave a thread so somebody can see it. It's hard to do.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was going to follow up with you've had a long and successful marriage, and anyone who knows you knows about the DCOE, and I'm guessing you draw a lot from Pike and Jennifer, or from that for Pike and Jennifer. And I was wondering if Blade Cell Consulting is when she reads those passages, does she react like Jennifer to Pike and tell you need to rethink it in the special loving way only a wife can?
Sometimes she does. Sometimes I ignore her. There's a lot of the times, there's certain things in the book where when Pike is aggravated about something that's just kind of domestic, you're in a restaurant or whatever, that's me. I mean, I don't, I'll poke her in the eye with it. How about this?
You so you traveled to India with your
Yeah.
wife, with Elaine, and uh we all knew that that was going to end up in this book or in a book, because you do those research trips. So how does experiencing these locations firsthand with someone close to you change your perspective as a writer? And were there moments during travels that fundamentally shifted the direction of the story you had originally planned to tell while you were in country?
Yeah, absolutely. You've heard me say in my speech that there's 50% I'm looking for and 50% is trying to find me. If I hadn't gone to India, the book would have had a completely different trajectory. The final scene, the final fight inside the largest industrial or residential building in the world, I didn't know that thing existed. I didn't know that till I got to Mumbai and everybody was bragging about it and showing it to us. As soon as I saw it, I was like, that's like Dr. Evil's Liar and James Bond. That's going to end up in the book. I mean, I had no idea about it. So, and did a ton of research on that. Where the Indian wedding is, well, we saw an India wedding. And I'll give my wife credit on that, give DCOE credit on that. And I was like, I need something, I need something, I need something. And we saw this Indian wedding with elephants and baboons and just they're ridiculously large. And they go over for years, literally. The engagement party, the wedding, there's one every time, Tom Brady's there, Brad Pitt, they're all there. And she said, why don't you do an Indian wedding? I was like, hmm, that's an idea. So originally I was looking at the wedding and then I saw these engagement parties and the way the timeline was working, that would work better. Well, we went to Jaipur and I was going to Jaipur to do research around some of the older areas that are around there, which ended up in the book. But Elaine plans all the hotels. So we stayed at this Oberoi hotel. And just to give you a feel for what that Oberoi is like, when I got home, Condé Nast rated it the number one hotel in the world. I mean, they beat
Really?
everybody. And we stayed there because the exchange rate was so great. I mean, we had our own butler. There were peacocks on the ground. Everything that's in that book was all there. Helipad, golf course, all of that was there. And it was just a fabulous 3 days. I mean, I didn't want to go do research. I was like, let's just hang out by the pool.
Chill.
And so I was like, and I was kind of a celebrity too. So, because it's all Indians there. There weren't any, I never saw any Westerners. I don't know why everybody talks about this cosmopolitan city. There weren't any. That comes out in the book too. I would never known that until I got down to Mumbai and I was like, okay, we're going to do a surveillance route through this area. And there is no way gringo like me or Jennifer are doing any surveillance route anywhere in there because you just stand out. Everybody kept coming up to Elaine and saying, can I take a selfie with you? People come up to me and say, can my son practice his English on you? If you were trying to do anything secret, it didn't even matter if you didn't look like you were doing anything wrong. You're going to be thronged by people everywhere you go. And we were in at Jaipur, and I said, went to the bar. They had this old English bar. They have a Sikh back there with a turban on who's serving the drinks. Great. I mean, it's just like you see in like a Casablanca movie. And this guy comes in and says, who are you? I was like, I'm Brad Taylor. What do you mean, who am I? And he says, well, what are you doing here? And I explained what I was doing here. And he was just floored. He runs out, comes back. It turns out he's a manager, gives me his card, gives me a signed book from the Mr. Oberoi, the guy that built the hotel, built all the Oberois. They're all over the place. There's one in Dallas, I think. There's one in New York. And I've got his signed autographed book. He says, send me the book when you're done. And I told Elaine, I was like, the terrorists come in there and wipe that place out. Not sure I want to send it to him. That's kind of what
Killing
we were talking about
everybody.
earlier. I'd love for him to read the book, but I don't want him to get mad and say, "Well, you made it sound like, we didn't have any security."
With security, they didn't have guns, or
Yeah.
which was
But that
crazy.
was it ended up being one of the number one hotels in the world. And we were just going to stay there. It wasn't like I was looking for a place. And then
Right.
when it came time to do the wedding, the engagement party, I was like, well, yeah, that billionaire would pick the number one hotel in the world to do that. So that ended up being in the book, and I had all the research I needed for that.
Well, so you mentioned some of the things that obviously made it into the book, but all of those travel lends itself to one of the hallmarks as your books are known for the authentic portrayal of global locations. Could you share a memorable experience from your research trip that didn't make it into the book, but gave you like a deeper insight into the culture?
Yeah. So we went to I do a ton of research before I go. I'm going to find these areas. The one spot I wanted to find was a Muslim area inside India, inside Mumbai. And so there's a market on north of the train station. It was like a 4-click walk. And I was just going to go to the market. I can't remember the name of it, but I could look it up. And just going to run around the market. Sounds like a good place to do some kind of scene. Let's go do some research. Well, by the time Elaine was wearing shorts, because we were told by our expert Indian person that you can wear shorts in Mumbai, it's okay, but you get anywhere else, it's much more conservative, wear long pants, that kind of thing. And so for most of the day, we were doing real cosmopolitan stuff. I went up to the bar that's in the book is in there. We were up there. Well, we got closer and closer to this market, and it turned into Beirut. All of the women were wearing full on abayas with niqabs. I mean, they were what we used to call BMOs, black moving objects. They were all like that. All the men were staring at Elaine in her shorts, and it got really, really uncomfortable. And it was wall to wall people. Cars were honking as they were trying to get through the crowds. There was nowhere to go. We got into the market itself. Everybody was staring at us like with daggers. So it was no longer a sense of, oh, look, it's somebody from America. Let's go talk to him. I want to get a selfie. It was like, what the hell is that guy doing here? And we walked through that thing, and Elaine got to the point where she said, I am completely uncomfortable here. And I kind of said, I am too. And so we left. And the book never shifted that way. I certainly could have used it, but it never shifted where I needed an area like that. And so it never made it in the book.
You tuck stuff like that away for in case you return to India?
Yeah. Yeah. I could use, I mean, sooner or later. I mean, it does help just knowing how those cultures operate in a foreign country because they're Indians, but they're Muslim. I mean, it's not like they all came from Iran and they took it seriously. In fact, we were probably 300 meters away from the market, and you can see the side of a building where it starts the market at, and what's painting on the side is the Iranian flag. And that was my first
Oh
indication that,
wow.
okay, these guys are serious. Here we go.
So
Jeez.
that's not something you can't get that from Google Maps, Google Earth, or
No,
whatever. You
not at
can't
all.
you can't you can't experience that.
No. And that's the same with just the fact that, like I was talking about with surveillance stuff, there was just no way. I remember I was kicking myself with Elaine. I was like, there's no way Pike and Jennifer, the task force, are going to do any surveillance in this place. It's just impossible. I mean, if you go in a train station, it is nothing but Indians, and they're all looking at you. It's like a record scratch everywhere you go. And I was like, there's just, even though they're then like the train station, they weren't unfriendly. They were, in fact, were overly friendly. Everybody wanted to take our picture. And to the point when we first got in country, uh, you're worried about pickpockets and you're worried about
Yeah.
these guys doing this and doing that. And by the time we left, it's like, here comes another selfie guy. It didn't even phase us. They just would want to do it. And so I was kicking myself for picking India. I'm like, this is going to be, there's no way they're going to do this. But I would never have learned any of that had I not been there. And we had another instance. We went to Elephant Island, which did make it in the book. Oh, actually, this made it in the book. The guy that the Chinese guy kills because he's following him around, that guy followed us around. I'm sure he had ill intentions. He would not leave us alone. We got off the boat and they have a train you can take up or you can walk. We decided to walk. Everybody was pestering us to do a tour. I didn't want to do a tour. It's not that big of a place. I can figure it out on my own. And so this guy walked up to us and said, those guys are so annoying, aren't they? He spoke pretty good English. We said, yeah, they sure are. And so he started walking with us, talking, talking, talking. I was like, okay, This is creepy. So as you go up the stairs to get to the temple, it's about a quarter mile of nothing but stairs. And there's markets all along the side. They're selling you souvenirs. And so we stopped to look at souvenirs. He stopped. We'd walk forward, we'd stop, he'd stop. And he followed us all the way until we got to the first cave. I said to Elaine, just like happened in the book, go down to the fifth cave, let all these guys that just got off the ferry, they're going to go to the first cave. Let's get rid of this guy. And we went down to the fifth cave, and he followed us down to that, right where that toilet is. And
was there I can't say anything.
well, I wasn't sure. I kind of felt bad because I finally pulled him aside and I said, "Look, you're creeping me out." And he says, "Well, I don't mean to be mean. I don't mean to be mean. And do you want me to leave?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like you to leave." And he said, "Okay, I was just trying to practice my English." And he left. And I thought, was he really trying to practice English and I'm a jerk? Or
So
it
you
just was uncomfortable.
Better safe than sorry, man. Better
yeah.
safe.
you were Mr.
Well, we
Chin.
went back,
You were
and
Mr.
I'm
Chin.
pretty sure I'm pretty sure I was right because you wind your way around, you get back to the first cave, and you're going back down to where the ferry is, and he's sitting at a table drinking a Coke, looking at the ferry, and he's waiting on somebody else to get off. Another Mark to come off. So
That's so funny now that because that scene's now it's in my head, and I'm thinking of you because he's going there to meet somebody with a funny shaped head.
yeah,
And what happens in that whole scenario, and seeing you now instead of who the character is, and what happens to it.
well, he couldn't get rid of him, and I was just like, and the other thing that pinged on me is you have to pay to get in, but he didn't pay. He just walked in, and I was like, okay, he's got some kind of deal going on here.
Pay for the
Yeah,
toilet paper too.
Oh, yeah, Lane. She went to the toilet. She went to use the bathroom, and I hear her yelling, and I'm like, "What the hell?" So I go down there, and she's like, "No toilet paper." So this guy runs off, gets toilet paper, comes back, got to pay for it by the sheet. There you go.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I saw that as a kid, definitely. Yeah.
Well, with all those, with the way you described India, how do you think Western intelligence agencies gather information? I mean, do they have to rely, you think, on local human, or do you think that there's
Yeah,
American-born Indian descent type thing,
they might do that, and I mean, so in some spots, like in Mumbai, when you get down to the financial district, or in Delhi, where there's a real tourist area where the spice market is and that kind of stuff, and that's another thing that maybe was colored when our visit because we were right at the tail end of monsoon season, so there wasn't any lot of tourism had come in yet. So in Mumbai, it'd be okay. The Bollywood area would be okay. And the definite tourist area, for instance, Taj Mahal. I mean, that's nothing but, I wouldn't say Westerners. There's nothing but non-Indians. There's Chinese or all kinds of people that were there. But they would have to hire locals if they wanted to go anywhere to penetrate anything. You're not getting away with anything.
Wow. Well, this isn't book related, but as both a former Delta Force commander and now security consultant at Asymmetric Threats, what emerging global security concerns keep you up at night these days?
The emerging, I mean, they're all perennial.
Yeah, okay, perennial, emerging, however you want to.
I mean, they're all the same thing. I will say that the one of the things that has surprised the hell out of me was number one, how efficient Israel was. I didn't think that would, Hezbollah, they pretty much decimated them. Hamas is gone. And the fall of Syria, I did not see coming. I mean, I don't think anybody saw that coming. And that has basically chopped Iran off at the knees because the Hezbollah gets funded and, but more importantly, gets armed by Iran. And Iran arms them, but they fly all the stuff into Syria and cross the border into Lebanon. They can't fly it into Beirut airport. And now they've lost all that. There's no way to get any munitions into Hezbollah unless they do this long, arduous path where they're going to go through Iraq into Syria. They're crossing now. They're going through Kurd territory and all the other different territories. So that to me was I was like, I can't believe that happened. And then first I said, this is a bad thing because he is a terrorist. He used to be a terrorist. Now but he's made peace with the Kurds and there's all kinds of stuff going on there that really surprised me.
Yeah, I've been following that. I don't have a heck of a lot of knowledge on it, but I've been following that guy and wondering, if he's a wolf in sheep's clothing or if
that's same with me. Same with me.
So, well,
what do you take? So the news just came out recently where relatively recently. We're moving a carrier group from the Pacific into the Med, or um
The
to
Gulf of
join up with
America, you
another.
mean?
What's that?
The Gulf of America?
Yeah, no, yeah, the Gulf. Yeah. And then we're building up um, our TAC force, Air Force over in Diego Garcia. Do you have any thoughts on what's going on there? Is that just a projection of force, or do you
Yeah,
think we're aiming to do
I think
something?
it is. If I mean, I can speak freely because I really have no idea.
Yeah.
I think they were looking at I think they're looking at the Houthi threat vector, and they're saying we got to do something about that, and that's going to require a sustained campaign. Now we've been putting people Diego Garcia back and forth for quite a while. It just doesn't make the news. One thing that I always do when I see the news is you have to pinpoint, is this really news? Or is this just the first time these guys have seen it? So, for instance, if somebody gets bitten by a shark, it doesn't make the news. A sucking guy gets bitten by a shark, people start reporting on it. Next thing you know, shark attacks are everywhere. When if
Mhm.
you look at it statistically, nobody's getting more bitten than they did in the past. It's just now making the news. So when someone says, we've just moved a bunch of Air Force components to Diego Garcia, I go back and look and say, okay, is this just something that happens that you're now reporting on it? And 9 times out of 10, that's what it is.
The media. It's wonderful.
Well, Brad, once again, you've that's I think fourth or fifth time you've survived the original portion of the interview. Uh,
Oh, this is
you,
the worst part.
your
No,
interview,
no, it's the
no,
best
no,
part.
no, no. We've changed it. Your interviews always go a little quicker because you have the best, like, succinct, most economy of language. I think about anybody that comes on the show. Very military to the point. Uh, so, but I think we got a lot of information out there. And if you didn't get enough to read this book, then you slept through the interview. So wake up, buy the damn book. It's really exciting. There's some great action sequences as always, but some really good characters. So I think this is going to be just another one of those New York Times bestsellers that seems to follow your name.
I hope so. I appreciate it.
It was really an enjoyable read. Once Chris and I were talking, once you hit the gas, I mean, there's
It doesn't let up.
the engine a little bit, but once
Yeah,
you hit the gas, it's just like
Yeah,
I'm already done. The book's done. So
I appreciate it.
does it feel that way when you're writing it, or is
Yeah. Well, when I hit a certain spot, well, it goes in fits and starts. So I'll get to, because there's certain things about books that you'd like, it's in my head, but do I have to put on the page? Because this is just not sexy to write. But if you don't get it on the page, nobody knows what the hell's going on. Wait a minute. How'd they end up in Goa? You know, but I got to put right there. Speaking of Goa, that's one thing I forgot was they were talking about, everybody talking about the hippies, and this is where all the yoga's from. The song Sympathy for the Devil, when they killed all the way on the way to Bombay, that's Goa. They were,
oh, okay.
you know, it's in the song. And so I really wanted to see all the hippies, and there was none. It was just us. We were the only people there. It was once again, I was like, these damn people all lying to me. Tito's Lane was just like I talked about it. I mean, there's a bunch of scary looking people running around Tito's Lane. I was like, man, this is a gunfight here.
yeah.
You didn't do much for the tourists of Tito's Lane, tourism of Tito's Lane.
But it used to be nothing but Russians. I mean, it was our hotel had, Russian signs on the wall and stuff. It's like, okay.
Um, well,
Good.
anyway, cheers to
Yes,
another
sir.
book. And now we get down to a little more personal stuff. So my questions are pretty simple, really. Who has a more serious gun collection or gun collecting problem, Pike Logan or Brad Taylor?
My wife would say me. I, in fact, just ordered my action for my Johnny Cash precision rifle I'm building. It's called the Johnny Cash precision rifle because I'm building it one piece at a time. And I just got the action.
All
Well, I
right.
just ordered it. I haven't gotten it yet.
Wait, hold on, John. Whenever I hear Pike and Jennifer arguing, I know it's you
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
In fact, that argument about the rifle he's
about the
testing,
rifle. Yeah, yeah.
that's me. I'm buying a new rifle. She's like, you've got 100 of them. What are you doing?
That's exactly what drove that question. I could picture you guys both speaking. Knowing both of you, I could hear both your voices. Um, did you have an operational nickname that you can share?
Yeah, my call sign was Woody.
Woody.
because the one time on a Target, they said I looked like the guy from Toy Story running around. And so I became Woody, and that stuck.
Wait. Where was this?
It was actually NIZ, Iraq.
Yeah.
Okay, well, building on that one, if it wasn't the DCOE, it can't be the DCOE. What would Elaine's operational nickname be?
Vulcan, the Vulcan.
The Vulcan.
Capital
She is
T H
very
E.
precise and knows everything, but sometimes she knows so much she doesn't get the joke.
Okay, all
You can
right.
tell her a joke and she'll say, "I don't understand it. We never went to Houston. It's a joke, honey. It's a joke."
Does she do the one eyebrow raise? That
Yeah.
All right. Mine are India themed, obviously, because the book takes place there. How much would you have to be paid to sample Indian street food?
You would have to pay me a whole lot. I mean, tons of money. I didn't even eat Indian food. I learned that you order your food and you say no spice, and you're still getting spices. They look at you like you're a loser, but they'll give it to you and it still has spice on it. I ate mutton chops everywhere we went. It's like, okay, here comes. I mean, basically, I ate chicken fingers everywhere we went with no spice.
Smart. In one scene in the story, I think Pike shows back up with McDonald's. It's towards the end.
McDonald's.
Yeah,
There was one
McDonald's.
McDonald's there, but Lane wouldn't let me go, but I put it in the book.
So that because Jennifer's like, I think Pike says something like Jennifer would want something ethnic, and you're like, no,
Yeah.
you're getting
Well, see, Elaine ate it all. I was like, I'm not eating that. No
that's
way.
crazy. Did you happen to see, like, when you were on the streets? Did you see? Because I've seen some of the videos and it's disgusting. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I used to eat the Thai when I was in Thailand. I ate on the street food there, and part of the reason they have spices, I'm absolutely convinced, is it's supposed to kill everything because it's just like so toxic. But the one thing I wouldn't, they had mango smoothies they served everywhere, all the street corners, and they would make them out of fresh mangoes. And we were talking to a guy there, who's like, those mango smoothies look so good, and he was like, oh, no, no, don't. This is a local.
How? Why?
Don't drink the mango smoothies because one, we don't know where the ice came from. You're going to get sick from that. And two, we don't know where how long those mangoes been sitting there. He was just like, whatever you do, don't eat the mango smoothies.
Chicken fingers. That's all I would need. Chicken fingers. So what part of your trip to India were you really excited about to visit and see? And did it meet or beat your expectations?
I actually was really excited. Elaine wanted to see Taj Mahal and the big things, and I'm not a big see the Washington Monument kind of guy. So the Taj Mahal was kind of neat, but it looks a lot better in pictures than when you see it up close. It's an old building.
Hmm.
So I really like the older stuff that like in Goa, those old churches and stuff are real. And I enjoyed that a heck of a lot more. I really did enjoy that because they didn't spend a lot of time trying to keep them together. There's some plaques they have, but that's about it. And they're from Benedictine times. In fact, here's a neat trivia thing I never would have known either. If you can trace your lineage, and Goa used to be owned by the Portuguese,
Mhm.
not the British. And if you can trace your lineage, you can get a
Yeah.
Portuguese passport
You put that in the
from
book.
Go. Oh, did I?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was fascinated by that.
That is-
So I had a long conversation with a guy
Yeah,
about
that's
how
in the
you can do
book,
that.
Brad.
So that's what all those churches and stuff. I really enjoyed looking at those. I like that better than looking at the giant Taj Mahal.
I think Saint Thomas, one of Jesus's apostles. I think one of his churches, or he was killed in Goa, or something like that.
Yeah, they had a whole history. Well, I know the Pope went there. I think he went there in 1986. You'd think it was yesterday because you go to the church and his stuff is everywhere.
Right.
But I guess the one thing would be the Oberoi Hotel really floored me. I mean, I've never been rich enough to experience that, and the exchange rate, it wasn't that expensive. Elaine just picked it. That was really, really
Awesome.
nice.
Butlers and maids, huh?
Yeah, I mean, every morning there was no check-in desk. They met you at a car. We came popping up in this beat up SUV, and somebody took the luggage. A guy had an iPad. He said, "Follow me." He takes you to the villa. You never see a check-in guest. He does everything. By the time you take your change clothes and you're going outside, there's a bunch of flowers on the front stoop that say, "Welcome, Mr. Taylor," made out of rose petals. You go eat dinner. You come home. Good Night, Mr. Taylor, made out of rose petals. I mean, it was just phenomenal.
Legit. It's awesome. Um, you already kind of answered this one, but maybe there's something else. Did you ever feel like you were being tailed other than that one time with the caves? Did you ever think like us, our guys, or the RAW or MSS
Yeah,
or thieves?
not this time. Not in India. I have in the past in other places, but in India, I never got the impression. It's probably because it's so chaotic. It would be pretty easy to tell me and for me not to catch it. It is just a swirling mass of humanity everywhere we went. You couldn't. Um, I mean, unless somebody was walking around with a blaze orange baseball cap on, I would have never noticed. I couldn't do time and distance and say, okay, I saw that guy here, and now I'm seeing him there, because it was just there's just no
Impossible,
way to
huh?
find it. Yeah.
Yeah. So did you see more Chinese, more Russians, more Iranians? Like what you see?
Some were Indians. I'll tell you that. So that was the other problem, because China's in this book too, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I haven't seen a damn Chinese guy anywhere. So in New Delhi, there was a lot of there were a lot of Chinese. At Taj Mahal and that kind of stuff, we saw a lot of Chinese on tours. But it's just as far as seeing Chinese in, like, say, a restaurant or something. In Mumbai and New Delhi were the only places I saw them. And New Delhi, I even discounted because we were there 5 days before the G20. And so we actually stayed in the hotel where all the heads of state are staying in New Delhi. And they were starting to lock down security quite a bit. They actually, it's a funny story. They have these monkeys that run around and they howl and they throw stuff at you. Literal monkeys on the streets in New
Okay.
Delhi. And so the G20's coming, and the last thing Modi wants is some monkey to throw some feces on the Prime Minister of Britain or UK. And so he got all these guys together, and they're the monkey chasers, and they chased all the monkeys out of the city before the G20, and they came all back in afterwards.
Honey, what did you do today? I chased monkeys.
Do they get paid by the hour per monkey?
I don't know. We saw because we saw a bunch of monkeys while we were going out, and we asked somebody about the monkeys, and they said that well, you get to let them, look at them now because they're not going to be here next week. And we were like, "What are you talking about?" And he told us the whole story about getting rid of the monkeys.
It's crazy. Well, it sounds like your trip was almost as eventful. Almost as eventful as not quite. Again, audience, pick it up. If you're a crew fan, you're going to love this book. And if you're not a crew fan, you're still going to love this book. Brad, we appreciate you coming by every time. And again, we're looking forward to book number 20.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Well, Christopher,
Yes.
another great interview. It's always a pleasure to have Brad. He's better at answering questions than we are at asking them.
Speak for yourself.
No, I'm speaking for both of us. But no, anyway, a lot of fun reading this book. His action is just killer. You can tell he's been there, done that.
He excels at it. Kills lots of people. Makes it fun.
Makes it fun. Like all the best killers do. I don't even know where we're going with this.
We're going with
Buy
Brad
this-
Taylor.
Brad
Go buy
Taylor.
it.